And once again, thanks everybody for having me. I wish to God I was there. I was so looking forward to this event. Hopefully you got my video yesterday. I'm sure it's been tremendous. It's such an important, timely conference. There is so much going on in the world right now that needs to be addressed with the lens that this event is bringing to it. So I'm Michael Casey. You may have met me yesterday. I'm the chairman of the Decentralized AI Society, which is looking to enable a decentralized framework for artificial intelligence, which I will make the case for in this presentation is something that I think is absolutely paramount. It's a moral imperative, but it's also an economic imperative. We're going to have to move to a structure for artificial intelligence that in some way breaks free of the centralized model that has dominated the web, the internet, and now the artificial intelligence economy. All right, so the latest thing in AI that everyone's talking about is this emergence of agents, the AI agents. And what we mean by that are these entities that are, artificial intelligence machines, if you like, that represent us, that are going to be acting on our behalf. And in many respects, it's an exciting idea that, you're going to be empowered by a machine to do a lot of the things that are sort of complicated in this world for you, to trade your investments, for example, or to purchase your food, to shop for you, to prescribe and manage your medical and health and dietary treatments. So, the idea is this machines they're representing you, and again that this is something that could sort of, and obviously companies and everybody, right? So the world will have these machines that work on their behalf as agents. Now we want these to be trusted agents. We want to know that these agents are entities. They are, pretty much like what we think of as legal agents in the legal sense of the word. We want, this is a picture here of my wonderful literary agent, Gillian McKenzie. She doesn't even know that I've used her photo here, but I just wanted to use her as an example because I've been working with her. I've written 6 books, and Gillian has been my partner since 2006. So we're coming on almost 20 years together. And I know every time Gillian is acting on my behalf, she is truly doing so, that she is not front running me, that she is not trying to get some deal on the side for herself. This, of course, is the other picture here is Agent Smith. Agent Smith was a character from The Matrix, and Agent Smith was the symbol of a dystopian world. He was the representative of the big evil machine. Obviously, 2 very extremes I'm trying to present here, but it's a really important point because we need to be able to know what is behind the black box or the system that is operating on our behalf if we're going to have these agents. If it is going to prescribe to me some medicine, for example, and deliver me some drugs that I will take, do I know that it is actually following what my body needs at that time to the utmost, or has it been acquired without me knowing by a pharmaceutical company that is now actually quietly being front runner? If we think about the way Google works and the ordering structure of the algorithms that run social media, we know that they don't actually deliver what's necessarily best for us. They deliver what is best for the corporate entity behind it, right? Because we don't understand or know or have knowledge of how those algorithms would work. There's no way to prove that social media right now is working in your favor. Well, just imagine that in a world where everything that you're getting is being represented by these, machine agents. It could get very, very dangerous. So we have to understand the underlying tech behind it. We need openness, and we need some sort of proof that we, in a very real way, own that relationship in the same way that we own the rights to a relationship with an agent in the real world, because they have this fiduciary duty. Agent, is a legal term that conveys this idea of fiduciary responsibility. Now, here's the thing that actually I think may help us. It gives us an opportunity at this moment. And that is that it's not just about the moral or economic imperatives. There's actually the physics of the internet are going to make it very, very important that we restructure the relationship around the internet for the use of agents. If we have so many of these agents all operating at the same time in a mesh network, where there are just billions of them, as people are saying, who are going to be delivering into the internet, then we're going to end up, if every single agent is pinging OpenAI's server, for example, it'll be a bottleneck. There's just no way that billions of API calls going in through one server could be handled, right? The internet would break. So we're going to have to move to an environment of edge compute. And edge compute is a world in which your smartphone, your laptop, your TV will actually connect with others in a kind of a mesh network, and the compute that is done for AI. So rather than have it all centralized in OpenAI servers or in Anthropic servers, and the inference is done in these sort of highly concentrated large data centers that are processing the information in that way, it will be done on these devices. And will be done at the edge, as we call it. The edge is the region at the edges of the network. And out of that, we'll be able to actually sort of keep these agents going, because they'll have the network much closer to them, as it were. So that's an interesting development. That's just a reality. But we don't know at this stage who will own the edge. Now, we think of ourselves as owning our phones and owning our laptops, but really there's all sorts of ways in which these guys, the Magnificent Seven as they're known, could actually control it, right? So that NVIDIA controls the chips. That's the top company there. Apple controls a lot of phones. Microsoft now still controls the models through via its very large stake in OpenAI. Google also has access to a lot of phones as an operating systems via its Android system, but also clearly has its own models and its massive trove of data. Amazon controls the storage that a lot of the NVIDIA chips and all the systems are run on. The compute runs there. Facebook owns an enormous amount of data as well that is now being used for the Llama model that lots of people are building on, because it's an open source model, but we don't know what the foundational model of Llama was built on, because that was built on Facebook's data. And then there's Tesla, of course, is another of the biggest 7 companies in the US that is now included in this, because it runs a lot of AI. It has its own devices. These are cars, which could be part of that network. And some could argue that because of Elon Musk's very close relationship with Donald Trump now, that he kind of owns the government, right? So there's an enormous amount of possibility. And these guys have $17 trillion in market cap, and they have $2 trillion in revenues. I think I mentioned this in my speech yesterday. But this is really important now, because the race to own the edge compute is going to be really, really dynamic. It is going to have a massive sort of competitive battle. And that $17 trillion is a currency. These guys could buy up whatever protocols are going to be used to design that mesh, those mesh networks in the edge compute of the AI agent world. Or it could be that they'll own the chips or the devices. One way or another, there is a possibility for them to become gatekeepers to the system. So we really need this to be dealt with in a different way. And I think this is the opportunity for us to really push forward with a new paradigm. If we're going to have our devices, our phones, our TVs, our laptops, everything else running this, then we should have collective ownership of the system that runs that, whether it is the protocols that are in charge of coordinating those mesh networks, or it is the models, most importantly, upon which these AI agents are built, we need to have collective ownership of that. And that's what tokenization will allow. It means that we sort of become prosumers, where we are not only using our devices to access AI and the information that it brings to us, but we're also providing the compute, we're providing the data, and we're being part of the relationship. That means that we are truly participating in this new economy and earning something in return for that we can then use to purchase other things. And so I foresee, hopefully, tokens at this point becoming relevant in a broader two-way economy. We have to establish self-sovereign identity to be able to do that, so that we can define ourselves as the individuals, as the human beings participating in this, and do so in a safe way that means our privacy isn't compromised. We should be able to get NFTs in return for the content that we produce in this environment. And out of this, we need to be able to make programmable instant cross-border payments. So this system, this big agentic world, as we're calling it, really won't work unless payments can be removed from the inconsistency and the inefficiencies of the banking system. Now, here's why, in fact, agents could really be a huge boost for our lives in this environment. If you think about the way that interoperability faces, people look at, particularly in the blockchain space, but that really applies to every aspect of our lives. If you're trying to move your contacts from LinkedIn over to, say, YouTube or whatever, it doesn't work because they're built by different systems and different owners and different platforms. And we as humans find that very time consuming to be able to make these steps to do one thing to the other. And it creates friction, and we don't have the brain space. It's really a human problem. But it's not a problem for an AI, right? An AI can quite easily go from, move assets off Ethereum onto Cardano. It can create a bridge. It can do all of the complicated things with wallets and sort of different smart contracts that are needed to enable what, for most people, is an incredibly complex exercise, and why many sort of mainstream people have a hard time dealing with crypto. But an AI is not going to care. AIs just will essentially abstract all of that away, and it's just peaceful. Like it's just something that we don't need to think about because the agent has resolved all of that. It's potentially an environment in which this really complicated non-ininterruptible world that we currently live in suddenly becomes abstracted away. It means that all these efforts that people are making to try to build, interoperability across these various complicated software systems becomes unnecessary. In fact, they can keep building in an environment, and the agents are going to solve it all for us. But of course, we need to be able to establish that. As I said, it needs to be a world of trust. So we need to know that we own it. We need to see what's going into this. We need to sort of understand the models. All of that's very, very important if we're going to get to this beautiful abstracted world. If we do, I think there is a massive opportunity for an economic revolution right now. What we're talking about really is a shift in property rights. We're shifting away from centralized control of data, of content, of everything that goes into this economy, and we're moving it out to the edge to human beings. And if we look at every moment in history, including the invention of the limited stock company in Holland, which is one of these experiences at the beginning of the 17th century, there was a massive boom in wealth because we'd gone from a world where capital was controlled by a very small number of people to having a larger group of people be able to participate in that. And the Dutch East India Company, created at that time, became the most powerful company in the world. And this tiny country of the Netherlands became incredibly wealthy. And this is just an image, a painting from those times, and I think it's in the Indonesian port of Malacca, and it's the ships from the Dutch East India Company. But I'm telling you this because this is a part of history. These moments in which a property right has been transferred to a wider class of people have enabled a massive boom in wealth. When Deng Xiaoping in China in about the early or mid 80s took charge of the Communist Party, one of the first things he did was to say that Chinese home dwellers could own the homes they live in. That was the catalyst for the Chinese economic revolution that happened after that, the massive growth in wealth that occurred. If you take that idea that we will now be able to transfer this power of wealth to human beings who have control over the assets, the data, the devices, that are able to make up whatever business model they want because they have that ownership, we could have the biggest and most broadest and most participatory economic expansion we've ever seen. The digital rights property revolution would just be something unseen before. And so I think we really need governments to think hard about this. When Europe looks at the United States and says, why can't we be as powerful as them? And we need to build a Silicon Valley, right? The idea is that we're going to try to replicate the model that is broken already, this magnificent seven with their $17 trillion in market cap, that we need to build that. And I say, absolutely not. That is not the way forward. The way that Europe would suddenly be able to leapfrog everybody else would be to think about how its citizens could participate in this new burgeoning AI economy, to grant them the right to manage their data, manage their devices, and be a participant, a tokenized participant in that big, broad economy. So I'm going to leave you on that note. Thanks very much for listening. You've got some ways to contact me there. I'm on Twitter. And if you want to check out DAIS, which is the Decentralized AI Society that I'm now the founder of. It's a body that's bringing together all of the nascent startups and protocols and various players who are building all the different pieces of the decentralized AI ecosystem. Check us out. It's Decentralized AI Society. That's it's a QR code. You can take a look there and learn a bit more about what we're doing. And that's all for now. Kirsa, I imagine I am sticking around for the panel, right?
Okay. Thank you very much, Mike. You said give a hand to Mike. I think is a big effort. For him, it's 5 a.m. in Washington. You are now, no? Washington.
Yeah, in Washington. Yes, exactly.
Okay. We will start also a panel here with a very good panelist. And to start, I think that is good that every one of you explain shortly, very briefly, who you are and what you are doing. In this way, Mike will know you, and we start to then the questions. Thank you.
My name is Albert. I had a presentation yesterday. I've been in crypto since 2013. I've been in multiple projects, 2L1, such as NEM and Radix, and now we're building another type of blockchain that's basically using AI at the consensus level to essentially enable smart contracts that can connect to the internet and make subjective decisions, which the way I look at it is the way to do truly decentralized AI. Instead of having a single model and try to do the verification of that model, which then places the trust in that specific model, we aggregate the outputs of multiple models so that the biases and the errors that the models have themselves get removed. The name is Jan Leger, and yeah, I invite you all to look into it.
Thank you for inviting me to this panel. My name is Nicolien Arns. I'm actually basically decentralizing offline already since I have kids, and since before that, and decentralizing goes to blockchain, and then now the next step to decentralize is AI. So I'm here. I founded several companies, but today I'm here to talk about the decentralization.
Okay, I'm Javier Vázquez Salceda. I am from UPC, from the Universitat Politécnica de Catalunya. I'm also from the for many years, since 2000 actually. I've been working into distributed artificial intelligence and the paradigm of agents, so agents and multi-agent systems. And in that research field, we have been for more than 20-something years working on decentralized solutions, not only decentralized computation, not only the decentralized machine learning, but also decentralized planning, decentralized reasoning, and then other issues that now are again relevant for this new, let's say, new topic on decentralized AI. I would say new old, that things like coordination, negotiation, And then in our community, we have 20-something plus years of research that can be used to be able to have decentralized orchestration of different members in that network and so on. So I'm representing this old community of the distributed AI that we say that we have something to say in this new community of decentralized AI.
Okay, then I think for seniority in the field is for you the question. What are the challenges that you think that is facing the deployment of a real decentralized AI?
First, the first challenge is that there are some people that they are trying to reinvent the wheel. So I was just curious, and I made some searches this week. Okay, what is the definition of decentralized AI? And I found zillions of very simplistic definitions. Is the crossing between AI and blockchain. Really? And then when you started to scratch a little bit more into the definition, they were referring into the crossing of machine learning and blockchain. Fortunately, I've been able to find better definitions, for instance, from the Mid Media Lab. They actually have a white paper that I have here, and I would recommend you to read. That has a broader vision on decentralized AI and actually the potential challenges. And one of the challenges is actually, okay, so there are the technological challenges on how you really are able to interconnect the different nodes of computation without some centralized system, the way to coordinate in a fully distributed way, and so on. And then there are some challenges that come from this distribution, like if you don't have a single entity that is able to certify that all the nodes and all the data is correct, you might have attacks by one of the nodes in certain algorithms or data that are not truthful. So then the question is how you ensure truthfulness of each of the members of the node. There are many things, and actually I will mention some of the challenges in this paper, but I would really advise you to read the full report of that group.
Okay. We'll try to share this document to the people because I think it could be interesting. What do you think about, the question is for
About
all
the
of you,
challenges?
then what do you think?
I mean, the challenges, I think the biggest challenge that we have is like coming from blockchain, which is a system that is built up more from like the grassroots up in a very open and transparent way. I think the biggest challenge with AI is that it's since the 50s already designed to be completely centralized and for control. I mean, in its initial design. And that's where it comes from. So I think our biggest challenge is how can we really make this tech usable for every single computer, every single person, so that it can work for freedom of people and for the autonomy of people and their security, also their responsibility. So I think the challenge is more that we are like behind a little bit in time, running around to try to talk with, in one side we have the regulations, the other side we have people that actually code, like a lot of open source AI that goes really fast, but these worlds are not really talking to each other. And I think for now to really decentralize it fast, I see this as the biggest challenge for that.
Albert?
I think you're totally right. There's tons of different like meanings to AI, right? And the problem is that we're conflating a lot of different types of AI, right? For example, our focus is indeed machine learning, specifically large language models, which very soon are going to be multimodal, right? And that's a specific type of challenge because when you're looking at the different implementations of AI, well, they have different properties, they have different use cases. You can't really just say, okay, how do we solve the, let's say, the centralization problem for AI? Because it's a lot of types of AI for a lot of types of applications. In the one I'm really focused on, as I said, large language models. Well, the problem here is like, it's used to make decisions in a way that it's totally subjective and like in a way that the way I look at it, the challenge is how do you, well, not just verify the thinking, but rather agree on an output that we think is, let's say, true, right? And the problem is that these models are completely wrong. They have biases, they hallucinate very, very often. How do we make them more reliable? How do we make them more safe? the way we look at it is by essentially aggregating the outputs of multiple different models, right? When I look into like decentralizing AI, let's say again, right? There's, you know, who is doing the training of the model, right? Who's doing the inference of the model? And then as well, there's the model itself, right? And there's people working on each one of those 3 or even 4 categories. If you think like, how do you gather the data and make sure that it's not like biased by itself, right? Like you have the gathering of the data, then you have all the different processes and so on, right? So there's people working on each one of them. Each one of them have different implications. My focus really is like on the end state, because I don't think that we can realistically verify the whole process. They're literally black boxes right now. So we just focused on how do we get the outputs to be agreed upon multiple, as many different and as correct enough models.
Okay, Michael, what's your view on that? What do you think the main challenges?
So, I mean, I agree with all the panel's views. There are these essentially engineering challenges and they're coordination challenges. They're very much about designing protocols that are able to ensure that each of the participants in these distributed networks are able to work well. And this is a problem that it goes way back in computing history, and of course is an integral part of the way that a lot of blockchains and crypto have been dealt with. But I agree that that's just one element of what the notion of distributed and decentralized compute is all about. But I just think and it was the nature, the reason I focused on this in the speech. I think like we always forget, but I think engineers and economists don't necessarily swim in the same lane, right? For an engineer, the problem is this coordination. It's very technical. And it's important that engineers focus on that. But we need to understand as well the economic dynamics of what's happening right now, because it's all very well to say, I'm going to focus and build this solution. But who owns that is going to be a fundamental question. And I don't know that we would have been as concerned about that if we didn't think about what we've been through in the last 20 years, when we've seen this dream of an open, decentralized internet completely co-opted by these very large platforms that run these black box algorithms. The history of AI is a very long one, but the most recent history of AI is the social media AI age, when we became the product of these corporate entities rather than the consumers, the customers. We do not have an agent principal relationship with the large platforms of the internet. And so there's an incentive problem that comes with that relationship, the very concentrated ownership of the system. So I'm just going to keep banging the drum to say that, yes, in addition to all of the work that needs to happen in terms of figuring out this incredibly complex array, as we were just hearing, of multiple different AIs and different systems, different layers of the stack, all figuring out how to coordinate and understand and trust the outputs. We really need to also, as a society, focus on monopolies, on oligopolies, on structures and power, on how these systems work, because ultimately it will get co-opted unless we figure out how to have some way of collectively having a say in how all this happens.
Yeah, fully agree on that, and that brings to the next question, because that is an event about democracy, and what can bring, or what is more important, or maybe what is the first step to ensure that this part of ownership of the AI and governance of AI could be this one, the first step, or at least the governance of AI, could be this one, the first step to ensure the democratic values of these engines?
Well, in Europe, we had this interesting experiment that is the first, a bit with experts. There was the high-level expert group on AI, that it was a multidisciplinary group, so it was not just only text. Actually, there were sociologists, and then that they created the guidelines that then guided the process to create what is now the European AI law. So the first thing is that this law is not a typical law that has been only done, in an office by some legalists, but actually there was a panel of multidisciplinary experts that gave the guidelines, and then this was debated not in the European Parliament, but in the Council of Europe. And this actually ensured a high representation of different countries and different partners. So actually, the debate is one of the most plural debates that was made for a regulation in Europe. So always regulations have things to improve. Actually, they were about to release the regulation, and then we had this explosion of OpenAI and all these large language models, and they had to stop because they were about to release the law, and they, oops, there is something that we didn't include. So actually, there was a delay of 8-9 months to be able to include this emergence of all these new generalized AI models into the regulation. So the regulation provides some interesting things. Like, for instance, there are some clear no's. It's like, in Europe, some usages of AI are prohibited, full stop. And there is the full list of the things that, in principle, because they might be dangerous for European citizens, so it's directly, it's a no. And then there is a list of technology, of AI technologies and uses that should be checked, monitored, verified, and so on. And then this is giving now a guideline to researchers and to the developers into things that they have to add into the development, and things that they have to check and verify. Just that is already positive, because and it's creating a new debate for the developers. I need to, before releasing the product, try to think about potential bad uses of the technology. Yes, we can do it. Maybe we are not used to do it, but we should do it. One of the greatest problems we had with OpenAI and with many of these other generative AI solutions is that they were just released to general public without any protections. So for instance, we have tools that are able to create fake video, and everybody can use it. You don't need any expertise. Therefore, there is not a filter that you need to go through this education to use the tool, and then see this education, we will tell you, you should use it like this, don't use it like that. And then we have news like kids using these tools to make pornographic videos or images of other kids. This is an irresponsible release of the technology. So, and this connects to the previous panels. So, regulation at least is giving some guidelines to try to reduce the likelihood of the bad usage of AI. It's not enough, but it's a good advance.
But I'm sorry, you're a senior researcher. You said 20 years old on distributed AI. Okay, perfect. Then my question was, is that the decentralized AI and is giving us a solution for the governance, or can we find on that a solution for the governance of the AI, this distribution? Can we find a hybrid model that maybe is centralized and decentralized at the same time for this governance?
On one side, the distributed AI might pose some solutions to, or might reduce the risk for the bad uses of AI, because there is not a central actor that might dominate a given AI system. But also, it makes it a lot more difficult to trace and to verify the system. This is actually one of the dangers that are reported in this white paper of the Media Lab. And this means that we have to create methodologies and methods and guidelines to do these things properly. Even in so only distribute AI will not solve everything. It will introduce other issues that we need to address.
Nicolene, that you are a democracy activist, right? Do you think you find in the distribution of a distributed AI, decentralized AI, a solution for the democracy?
Yeah, of course, I would say I'm like activist and I also build products. But I would like to, what you said before about that AI is actually a lot of different things. Like as we treat it now, like is this AI like this organism that can be used by bad actors? I don't see it as that. I see it like that the AI is a lot of different aspects. We have the Agent Smith, we have the Magnificent Seven doing stuff. We have a lot of open source and a lot of people working daily to make their own agents. So it's already like a decentralized development. I think what you asked like before, like the first step to do is people to realize what AI actually is. And this is for me only possible at this moment. The first step is real information about it, consciousness, and that we do that with like a multi-bias answers from AI, not just to trust like the Magnificent Seven, but trust like a lot of different opinions of a lot of different AI models and create multi-bias instead of fighting disinformation of one specific bias. So the people can actually get information that is diverse and they can actually make up their own mind. The next challenge, I mean, the next step would be that people realize that they can use AI for themselves on their own computer without needing to trust huge companies. And with blockchain, that was a bit more tricky with all the smart contracts and the code was like very inaccessible. But with AI, it's different. You can ask AI, how do I install this on my computer? How do I use this? I mean, it's like, it creates its own assistance to actually be able to massively be adopted on a very decentralized network, which I mean every single computer of every single person.
You are saying that the solution is the decentralization of the compute then.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe it's the radical decentralization, but I believe that especially with AI that assists us in understanding how we can use the tech, this is a very good possibility because it's like a very big power and yeah, this should be in everybody's grasp.
Albert,
I mean, we touched on a lot of things, right? Yeah, this is democracy for all. I think that first, I don't see anything more democratic than telling people what they need, what technology they can use or they can't use. I don't think that it is. I don't think that telling them what they can see or what they can say, such as the Twitter files, is very democratic. I don't think that we are in a working democracy. At the same time, what I see here is that all regulations that you're focused on, right? Well, they have prevented me from creating a company here in Europe for the last 10 years. Not just like, I've got like 5, all of them outside from Europe, because it doesn't work. All of it, all this regulation right now, it's just keeping us away from being, at the forefront. That's why everything, literally everything, is just in the US and just in China. I mean, you guys can see, I mean, we've got Mistral, at least someone is trying to do something here, but reality here is that I'm pretty sure that what they're doing doesn't actually go through the regulation either, right? So I think what we need to do is kind of like absolutely deregulate as much as we can. I think that we're all adults and we all know how to actually not harm ourselves. We should be treated as adults. If not, we shouldn't vote, right? So I don't think that we're in a very democratic system, basically because we're not allowed to use the technologies that allows us to be at the highest level, highest potential that we've got, because maybe we don't create, let's say, porn photographies or whatever. Yeah. I think the problem is that treating us as children doesn't work. I think I'm getting fed up of this. I've been in the European Parliament multiple times talking there as well, trying to convince people on anything from blockchain to AI, and like just Europe doesn't listen. So founders, go.
Well, was not the topic of the, was not the question, but yeah. But Javier raised it. Javier raised the question is about democracy. I am agree with you, Albert, and is an important topic that you have put it here. To me, that is related also to this excess of centralization. We have a real risk, and that yes, the regulator should care about that, about the big brother and these monopolies and these big concentrations, these big data centers that they are building. This risk of the big brother is on the table. It's not for the future, it's this year, because this Magnificent Seven and all this is real. Then I think that the regulator should, you should take care, the regulators should take care about that, this concentration. And I am agree with your view, Albert, fully agree. But the question was about, is the centralization of the governance a solution that we can, let's say, we can talk about this solution now? Because what I see is that the AI, decentralized AI is something for the future. Okay, yeah, we are working. There is several projects. Mike has a very interesting project, DICE, on that, but it's not something that is happening now. We've been studying that 20 years, but it's not happening, or it's very few projects happening. Could we at least decentralize one of the questions of the AI, that is the governance of AI, and that can ensure the democracy, can make a more safe democracy? That was my question.
So like there's the training of the AI, right? For that, you need a lot of data. And normally that requires big companies that can do that. There's teams such as EXO that are trying to decentralize that. For example, how do you make the training in a distributed manner, right? There's things that are happening on that front. It's just technology. It will take some time, but it makes sense that if you have to aggregate all the information on the internet and then you need to digest it in a very well-structured manner and so on, it's very difficult to decentralize that, right? The other thing is the inference. And there's two main ways to do this, right? One, either you prove that the inference done by anyone in the world, anyone can do the inference, the thinking, yes? Anyone can do the execution, and that you can prove, say through ZK verification, that the execution was done correctly. That's one way to do it. Or the other way to do it, which is what I like, is getting multiple people to do the same inference, and then they will get different results, because every time that you ask a model, you'll get a different result, even if it's the same model, right? And then you just compare the outputs, because these models are wrong. Again, like they can give you 99% of the time one answer and 1% the opposite answer, right? It's how it is. So I think that, but when you're talking about governance, right? So like, what does it mean, right? I mean, if I'm thinking about the government itself, right? What I see is that does the government want to lose control of their decision making? And I would say no. I think that government is very happy being able to regulate everything and having money in order to regulate everything, and they're not going to give it up. I think that the only branch of the government that will really go focus on artificial intelligence will be taxation. That's the only thing where they're going to go head on. Let's make sure that we have all the new systems in the universe.
Is there.
Yeah.
Medicine, they are using money for medicine. They are using for resource management. There are many uses of AI that are supported by government. Let's not be so negative.
But it's
Valencia was a human mismanagement. It's not the AI. Let's not blame the.
It's the
let's
different intent, because I have asked many policymakers, company owners, a lot of people, like, what would you like to use AI for? I can tell you that, like, from like 50 people, one said, like, maybe we should share knowledge. Like everybody else, every single person, their answer was related to how can we gather data, how can we gather ideas, how can we gather insights, how can we gather as much data so we can learn what the people want. And I understand, because AI is great at doing that. You know, it makes things very efficient. You can do the taxes, you can do whatever you want to do, very efficient. But the intent was not necessarily to give this power to how can we make sure that citizens actually use this tool to their own benefit. And so it is a kind of like, I feel like it's a one-way motion, that if we put it the other way, we can create a better governance system in this sense. I don't know.
Mike, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Nicolene's comments there. I think that there's an inherent, very centralizing instinct to want to say, what can we do to control this and act on behalf of the citizens? And I think the one thing to remember is that like governance as a concept is not, certainly in the internet, is not something that is solely the domain of governments, right? We are being governed already by these gigantic platforms that have their own protocols, which is a kind of a constitution, if you like, that is dictating our behavior. So when we talk about governance, we really need to think about how are we as citizens, as participants in these digital environments, going to have the capacity to act in our interests in the way that we think of in the real world with democracy. So I think there's a real problem. The nation state doesn't necessarily, comply with the digital world, but we need to recognize, when I describe the Magnificent Seven, we can talk about them as an oligopoly, but I don't think that's what it is at all. An oligopoly is usually a collection of firms all operating within the same vertical. Each of these companies actually provides a different element within the stack that makes up the platform. So I think the much more important word is oligarchy. I think they collectively form a system of power and gatekeeping. So we need to see that as the challenge. And so when we talk about governance, and I do think there's a starting point to answer your question, Kirsa, on this, and I'll get to that in a moment. But when we talk about governance, we really need to be thinking about, how are we holding them to account? What is the, what is the before? What is the economic structure behind this? And so that, ownership of our data is actually an act. It's not just an economic decision. It is an act of governance in this system. So I sort of think that, as I said at the end of my speech, one of the first things we can do is to start with, how do we define individual rights in this environment? And things like self-sovereign identity, the idea that we can construct a structure in which I control my data, I have the right to decide who gets to see it and who doesn't, and that I have control over all these various other credentials and aspects of who I am, that is the building block upon which we then do everything else. I think that is the right place to start. So in answer to your question, Kirsa, I think focusing on self-sovereign identity, and we now have standards for this. There's the distributed ID model that is recognized as a system. There are certainly lots of governments and a variety of cities around the world who are trying to implement that into how they manage their IDs. Agreeing on a standard for that, to me, across Europe would be a tremendous way to kickstart the process by which we then think about how are we going to govern the AIs that are working with us, the human beings, in that interaction. So that's where I would want to see it start.
Yeah, I agree that the digital identity is the pillar of all the solutions of governance, and also this one. And if you want to make decentralized, you need that. But yeah, I go with you, but only to say to Mike that in Europe there is the EBCI, that is the European Blockchain Infrastructure, that is a solution, self-sovereign solution of identity done by the Commission. Is still not a super hyper solution, but it's not bad. It's the first step of the Commission making a self-sovereign identity. Go on.
One of the main challenges that some of the researchers in decentralized AI see is, once you have this identity and once users are conscious about the ownership of the data as an asset, personal data and so on as an asset, then the next tricky thing is an incentive scheme for collaboration. So for instance, in edge computing, how do you convince the users to allow part of the computation to be in the device? Because if the device will be starting computing things, the battery will drop down. So you need to give some sort of incentive to the user, and it doesn't need to be a monetary incentive. It's okay if you give me some time of your mobile phone when it's idle, then in exchange I will provide you a more personalized access to something, a more personalized service, or a cut down into the subscription of something. Another interesting case, in the world there are still many people that they suffer like special illnesses that are minority illnesses, no? So then maybe a company or a university or a research group wants to do research on that illness, and then you will contact the person. Is like, if you give us access to your medical data, then you will be one of the first individuals that will get the treatment. Otherwise, and this applies into many usages of decentralized AI. So one of the challenges to be solved is one or several incentive mechanisms for it to work, because if not, it will not work. Users will say, why my battery will not get to the end of the day, so I don't want this. And the other challenge is that the users should be educated on to take those decisions when they get the request.
It's good, this approach, because going to my possibly last question for all of you, and is, what is the first real world application that we can land with distributed AI, where we will see first this solution of the distributed AI going on and being useful for all the humans?
Right now, the main technology we have to solve the connectivity is blockchain, and that's why now many of the articles and things that you see on decentralized AI is on blockchain, while other people are working into other protocols, other techniques for the connection. So it may be an application that is using blockchain, and for that you are more.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, I mean, it's a very difficult question.
A real world
I mean,
application.
it's quite literally the multi-billion-dollar
Yeah,
question,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Let's be clear. Yeah. Okay.
I want to know and
No, for sure.
set
I
up the
want to know
company.
too.
Yeah.
The question, the point here is, and I think, but we can kind of reduce, right? Like, for example, anything that is decentralized, I mean, except for ZK Magic, right? Then normally the information is totally public, right? And that's not great, right? Because if I ask something tricky to my AI, then, did I lose privilege, for example? And if this was actually shared across the globe, how bad did I lose my privilege, for example, right? So there's a lot of implications of using decentralized AI for like consumer use, right? It's much more expensive than if you just use, a single server and it's like super optimized for that, right? So I think in general, like the retail user will always be just happy to be using OpenAI or their, in-device, edge computing and so on, right? I'm not a very big believer in this type of incentives, because like it feels to me like, if you're getting incentivized for something like this, it's because you're getting penalized for something else, right? So I'm a bit suspicious of this, but I'm sure that there's reasons for it, right? I think that what I see is there's tons of new applications that are possible that are just like not possible right now, right? For example, what we're building is, can we build a trustless decision-making engine, right? Like blockchains are kind of simple right now. They can just do code, very simplistic, if, then, and so on and so forth. Can we make them have subjective decision-making in a way that is as trustless as possible, right? And it will be sometimes wrong, but we want to see what you can do if you have something like that, right? I mean, it can go from something as simple as a game. How do you create a game?
A real world.
Yeah, I mean, that's a clear use case. I think that, I don't care if I lose privilege, for example, yes. If I'm playing on a game, like the game mechanics essentially, right? The items and everything is being generated on the fly by, a random, stochastic system, yes. That's something I can see that it's very easy for retail to adopt, right? If I'm looking into different type of like decentralized finance applications, right? There's tons of things that right now we can't do because normally you need humans in the loop. I mean, I'm sure you all know about decentralized autonomous organizations, for example, right? Many of them are, a multi-sig, are just a bunch of people that just go to Snapshot. They see what the Snapshot, like the community is voting, and then those 20 people decide to sign, hey, I want to do what the Snapshot community is saying, right? That means that, well, they can actually decide not to do it because probably they can go to jail if they do something that is illegal, right? So that's not very decentralized. It's a buzz factor of 20, yes? Not autonomous and not decentralized. What we can do is basically enable that, right? But of course, that has the flip side of, there's no way that you can stop it. If you have a machine like this, you can basically create a DAO that can do bad things, and I don't know how you will be stopping it, and that's the threat, right? Of crypto, right? Just one last point, I think. Crypto has been a great thing to essentially educate society about cryptography, right? And I think that, well, AI will be a great thing to educate society about data ownership, right?
I am sorry, we need to finish because there is a connection also, connection with a Silk Road network. The next panel will be connected to this network, and the connection is quite tricky, and I need to stop here and to start the next panel. Thank you very much, Mike, for your time and your passions to be there, and good luck in